Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. In the days when the world was still young and legends were woven into the fabric of everyday life, travelers in the region would speak in hushed tones about a castle that defied the laws of nature. It was said that on the eve of the summer solstice, when the sky blazed with the colors of dusk, a solitary fortress emerged from the mist, its turrets gleaming like shards of silver in the fading light. The castle was at first modest, a lonely outpost of stone that beckoned to the curious. Yet as the night deepened, those who dared to linger would witness a startling phenomenon. The castle grew. In secret meetings around crackling campfires and whispered conversations in shadowed taverns, people recounted how, with each stroke of midnight, new towers sprouted from its ramparts, new halls unfurled from its depths, and the very layout of the fortress shifted as if it were alive. Some believed that the castle was the manifestation of an ancient curse, while others claimed it was a gift from a forgotten deity meant to challenge the boundaries of mortal understanding. Among the many tales was that of the Stone Weaver, a mystical architect said to have been granted the power to command stone and spirit. It was rumored that in a moment of despair and unquenchable longing, the Stone Weaver had built the castle as a refuge for lost souls. But magic, as it often does, exacted a terrible price. Each night, as the castle's walls expanded and its corridors stretched into infinity, the cost was measured in the souls who wandered its ever-changing halls. Some believed that the castle grew larger because it consumed the dreams and memories of those who entered, while others whispered that it was a living entity, forever hungry for the stories of the past. At the foothills of the ancient range lay the village of Moonvale, a humble settlement whose lives were intertwined with the mystery of the ever-expanding castle. For the villagers, the castle was both a source of fascination and a harbinger of sorrow. Each night they would gaze up at the looming fortress as its silhouette morphed against the starry sky, a constant reminder that magic was not merely the stuff of dreams, but an ever-present force that could change the course of fate. Moonvale was a place of resilient folk. The elders recounted stories of ancestors who had attempted to enter the castle seeking fortune or salvation, only to be lost in its shifting corridors. Children grew up with wild imaginations, spinning tales of ghostly figures wandering the halls and mysterious lights flickering deep within its heart. Despite the fear, many in Moonvale believed that understanding the castle's secret might one day lift the heavy shadow that had descended upon their land. In the local inn, where travelers and townsfolk gathered, debates raged about the true nature of the castle. Some argued it was a divine test, a challenge for the brave to prove their worth, while others saw it as a curse that slowly devoured hope. Among these voices was that of Eleanor Reed, a seasoned scholar and archivist who had dedicated her life to studying the mystical forces that shaped the region. With a keen intellect and a compassionate heart, Eleanor believed that the castle was a key to unlocking long-forgotten truths about the human spirit and the nature of destiny itself. It was on a bitter autumn night when a stranger arrived in Moonvale, a man known only as Gabriel Thorne. Bearing the scars of past misfortunes and haunted by memories of a life filled with regret, Gabriel had wandered far from his home, driven by an inexplicable pull toward the enigmatic fortress. His arrival stirred the hearts of the villagers, for they recognized in him the spark of one destined to confront the impossible. Gabriel, whose eyes held the storm of inner turmoil, felt an unshakable compulsion to journey to the castle. He recalled fragmented dreams in which a labyrinth of stone and shadow whispered secrets of redemption and ruin. Though he feared what lay beyond the castle's ever-expanding gates, he knew that the answers he sought could only be found by stepping into the unknown. Realizing that no one person could hope to unravel the mystery alone, Gabriel sought out Eleanor Reed. Together they formed a fellowship of kindred spirits. Mara Linton, a fearless huntress whose keen senses and unyielding determination made her an invaluable guide through treacherous lands. Orrin Blackwood, an aged mage whose mastery over ancient lore and arcane arts had once been revered in courts of old, but who now lived in quiet seclusion in Moonvale. And Jonas Farron, a gifted cartographer whose maps, drawn with a blend of science and intuition, had chronicled the shifting contours of the land for decades. Bound by a shared purpose and the urgency of their quest, they set forth to uncover the secret of the castle that grew larger each night. The Fellowship's journey led them beyond the familiar fields of Moonvale and into the ancient woodlands that bordered the castle's domain. The path was fraught with peril, a maze of gnarled trees, hidden ravines, and illusions cast by the very magic that animated the castle. As night fell, the forest transformed into a realm of spectral beauty and eerie whispers. Ghostly figures flitted between the trees, and unseen forces stirred the leaves, hinting that the castle's influence extended far beyond its stone walls. Gabriel felt the pull of destiny with every step, his heart pounding in time with the rustle of the wind. Guided by Jonas's meticulous maps and Mara's unerring instincts, the Fellowship navigated the labyrinth, even as Orrin muttered incantations to ward off malevolent spirits that sought to lead them astray. As they advanced, subtle signs of the castle's nightly expansion began to manifest. In the distance, under the inky cloak of night, they saw parts of the castle that had not been there before. A new turret here, a spire there. The fortress seemed to defy time, its growth measured not in hours but in the slow, inexorable march of magic. Each new night brought whispers of additional corridors and secret passages, as if the castle itself were writing a story of its own that no mortal could fully decipher. The very landscape around them shifted in response to the castle's growth. Valleys deepened, hills rose, and even the stars above seemed to alter their courses in silent testimony to the ancient power that reshaped the world. After many days of arduous travel through ever-changing terrain, the Fellowship finally reached the imposing outer walls of the castle. The structure loomed before them, a sprawling labyrinth of stone and shadow that stretched upward and outward into the endless night. Its walls were etched with symbols and runes that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly glow, as if alive with the memories of countless souls. With trepidation and determination, they found a hidden entrance, a narrow, arching doorway that seemed to welcome them into the unknown. Beyond the threshold lay corridors that shifted and twisted, filled with echoes of voices from the past and visions of possible futures. Inside, the castle revealed its true nature, a living tapestry of memory, fear, and hope. The hallways were lined with portraits of long-dead lords and ladies, their eyes following the intruders as they moved. In one chamber, the walls were covered in intricate murals depicting the castle's history, its creation by the enigmatic stone weaver, its expansion fueled by the dreams and nightmares of those who dwelled within its sphere of influence. As they pressed deeper into the heart of the castle, each member of the Fellowship encountered personal trials. Gabriel was confronted by specters of his past, visions of a life lost to regret and missed opportunities. Eleanor found herself reliving moments of sorrow and betrayal, the pain of old wounds reflected in the eyes of the painted figures that adorned the walls. Mara faced her deepest fears in a hall of mirrors that distorted her image into monstrous shapes, while Orrin recited ancient incantations to steady his trembling hands. Jonas, ever the chronicler, meticulously recorded every detail in his weathered journal, determined to capture the castle's secrets for future generations. At the very center of the castle, hidden behind a massive, ornate door that required not a key but the unlocking of one's innermost resolve, the Fellowship discovered a grand chamber. Here, the walls were adorned with colossal frescoes that depicted the legendary stone weaver, a figure cloaked in mystery, whose hands molded stone as if it were soft clay, whose eyes burned with both sorrow and defiance. In the center of the chamber stood a colossal sculpture, carved from a single block of luminescent marble. It portrayed the stone weaver in his final act of creation, a moment when he sacrificed his own dreams to forge the castle that would shelter the lost. In that moment, the truth of the castle's perpetual growth was laid bare. The structure fed on the hopes, fears, and memories of its inhabitants, growing ever larger as long as there were souls burdened by sorrow and longing. The revelation struck the Fellowship with profound weight. They learned that the castle was not merely a prison of darkness, but a mirror reflecting the inner turmoil of the world. Its expansion was both a curse and a cry for redemption, a call for those who had lost their way to confront the demons within, and in doing so, set themselves free. Gabriel, whose heart had long been shadowed by regret, felt a stirring of hope. The castle's magic offered him a choice: to continue wandering in despair or to face his inner darkness and emerge transformed. In a quiet, solemn moment beneath the gaze of the Stoneweaver's statue, he vowed to break free from the cycle of sorrow that had defined his life. Inspired by the truth revealed within the Grand Chamber, the Fellowship resolved to harness the castle's strange power for redemption. They gathered in the central courtyard, a vast open space within the castle's ever-expanding walls, where the interplay of light and shadow danced like living memories. Here they began the ritual of unburdening, an ancient ceremony passed down through forgotten ages that required each person to confront and release the grief that had fueled the castle's growth. With Gabriel leading the invocation, each member of the Fellowship stepped forward. They recited personal oaths, reading aloud the sorrows that had weighed upon their hearts. As their voices mingled with the rustle of ancient stone, a gentle warmth began to emanate from the courtyard. The oppressive darkness that had long enshrouded the castle slowly started to lift, and for the first time in countless nights, a faint glow hinted at the possibility of dawn. As the ritual reached its climax, the castle itself shuddered. The walls, which had grown ever outward night after night, pulsed with an ethereal light. In that climactic moment, the magic that had driven the castle's expansion began to recede. The structure, which once seemed infinite in its labyrinthine expanse, contracted slowly as if taking a deep, cleansing breath. The spirits of those who had once been trapped in sorrow, represented in the faded portraits and echoing whispers, began to find rest. For Gabriel and the Fellowship, the transformation was profound. They had faced the darkness within, and in doing so, had unlocked the power to reshape their own destiny. The castle, which had long been a symbol of despair, now stood as a monument to the possibility of healing and renewal. A living testament that even the deepest wounds could be mended through courage, compassion, and the willingness to change. In the years that followed, the castle that had once grown larger each night became a place of pilgrimage, a sanctuary for those who had been burdened by loss and sorrow. The people of the surrounding lands, inspired by the story of Gabriel and the Fellowship, began to see the castle not as a cursed monument, but as a beacon of hope. Its once shifting, oppressive corridors were transformed into spaces for reflection, learning, and community. A place where the lost could come to find solace in the tools to rebuild their lives. Moonvale and its neighboring villages flourished with renewed optimism. Artists painted murals celebrating the triumph over darkness. Poets composed verses that sang of redemption. And scholars recorded the history of the transformation in texts that would be passed down through the ages. The legend of the ever-expanding castle evolved into a tale of how confronting one's inner demons could lead not to despair, but to the rebirth of the human spirit. Gabriel, now a wise elder, with eyes that still shimmered with the memory of countless nights, often wandered the quiet halls of the castle. In the soft light of early morning, moments when the world hesitated between night and day, he would sit by a large window that overlooked the valley and reflect on his journey. The castle, once a monstrous labyrinth of fear, now exuded a gentle radiance, a promise that even the darkest night could yield to the light of hope. In his final years, Gabriel penned his memoirs, a detailed chronicle of his quest for redemption and the profound lessons he had learned from the living castle. His words, filled with both sorrow and joy, served as a guide for future generations, a reminder that every heart, no matter how lost, holds the capacity for renewal. The story of the castle that grows larger each night endures as a timeless parable, a tale of how darkness, when confronted with courage and compassion, can transform into a wellspring of light. Its ever-changing walls, once symbols of despair, now bear the marks of countless journeys towards self-discovery and healing. The magic of the castle is not a force of destruction, but one of perpetual transformation, mirroring the human condition, a journey marked by loss, struggle, and the ultimate triumph of hope. As dusk falls over the valley each evening, the castle still shifts and expands, its stone spires reaching toward the heavens. But within its walls, the voices of the past have grown softer, and the echoes of anguish have been replaced by a quiet song of resilience, a melody that whispers to all who are lost that there is always a path home, and that even in darkness, the light of a new dawn awaits. Long ago, before the memories of Nightfall Haven were marred by despair, the town was known as Aurora's Edge, a vibrant settlement that basked in the glow of the sun. It was said that the land was blessed by a benevolent deity of light who ensured that each day began with radiant promise. But then, a tragedy unfolded that would change everything. A revered town elder, whose name has been lost to time, betrayed his people by sacrificing the town's sacred relic, a golden medallion believed to be a symbol of the divine light, in a misguided attempt to secure personal power. The gods, enraged by this betrayal, cursed the town. From that day forward, the skies would remain dark, and the sun would never rise again. The curse was not merely a matter of failing light. It was a profound metaphysical wound that robbed Aurora's edge of hope and color, plunging it into perpetual twilight. Over time, the curse transformed Aurora's Edge into Nightfall Haven, a town where the glow of the sun was replaced by the cold luminescence of moonlight and the eerie radiance of starlight. The once fertile fields turned barren, and the vibrant hues of nature were muted into shades of blue, gray, and black. The townsfolk whispered of ancient grief echoing through the streets, and many believed that the darkness itself had become a living entity, watching, judging, and sometimes even protecting them. Despite the unending gloom, the people of Nightfall Haven persevered. Their lives, though touched by melancholy, were rich with traditions and resilience. Each citizen bore the marks of the curse, a quiet stoicism in their eyes, a determined calm in their hearts, and a deep understanding of the beauty that could be found in darkness. There was Miriam, a kind-hearted baker whose oven still produced bread with a faint, comforting warmth. Old Tobias, the town clockmaker, whose intricate timepieces ticked out the rhythms of life despite the absence of sunrise. And young Elian, whose dreams were as vivid as the legends of old, carrying an unwavering belief that one day the sun might return. In Nightfall Haven, daily routines were structured not by the rise and fall of the sun, but by the subtle changes in the ambient glow of the sky. When the faint blue light of the pre-dawn hour emerged, it signified the start of the day, a time when work began, when children would make their way to school, and when the town's community gathered for morning rituals. The citizens learned to appreciate the beauty of the night, the gentle silver of the moon, the silent dance of the stars, and the quiet majesty of the darkened landscape. Artists painted with hues of midnight and indigo, and musicians composed ballads that celebrated both the pain of lost light and the tender hope of renewal. Among the aged manuscripts in the town's dilapidated library, a prophecy was discovered, a cryptic verse that spoke of a time when the curse might be undone if the people could reunite the sacred relic that had been sacrificed centuries ago. According to the faded parchment, the relic, a golden medallion of unparalleled radiance, had been shattered into fragments and scattered far and wide. Only by retrieving these pieces and restoring them to the altar of the old temple, hidden deep within the forest beyond the town, could the curse be broken and the sun restored. The prophecy ignited a spark within the hearts of many, but none were more determined than a young historian named Leora Valente. Raised on stories of a time when light bathed the world, Leora had spent her life yearning for a taste of that lost brilliance. With the prophecy as her guide, she vowed to embark on a quest to recover the relic fragments and bring about the dawn that had been lost to her people. Leora did not set out alone. She gathered a fellowship of brave souls, each with their own reasons for wanting to see the sun rise once more. Among them were Darian, a former warrior whose valor had been tempered by the relentless darkness, determined to redeem his past transgressions. Seraphine, a mystic with an uncanny ability to read the hidden language of the night, who believed that the cure lay not just in the relic, but in understanding the curse itself. Jonas, an ingenious inventor who fashioned contraptions to harness the scant light that managed to seep through the perpetual twilight. And Mira, a healer whose gentle touch and compassionate spirit had comforted many in the darkness, and who dreamed of a world bathed in natural light once again. Together they forged a plan to travel to the ancient forest, locate the long-forgotten temple, and piece together the relic before the curse could claim them all. The path to the temple was perilous. The forest that lay between Nightfall Haven and the sacred altar was a labyrinth of twisted ancient trees, haunted by spectral voices and restless spirits. The deeper the fellowship ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the very air was heavy with sorrow, the trees bending under the weight of centuries of lost hope. The group encountered many trials along the way. Eerie lights dancing at the edge of their vision, paths that seemed to shift when not directly observed, and the persistent feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. Yet with every obstacle, their resolve grew stronger. Guided by Seraphine's cryptic insights and Jonas's ingenious devices, they pressed forward, their journey a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming darkness. After many arduous days, the fellowship finally emerged into a clearing where the remnants of the ancient temple lay crumbling and overtaken by nature. Ivy and moss clung to the stone walls, and statues of long-forgotten deities stood as silent guardians of a lost era. In the center of the ruins, an altar, once resplendent with golden radiance, was now dull and broken, its surface scarred by time and neglect. Leora felt a profound sense of destiny as she approached the altar. Here, the prophecy said, lay the key to restoring the sun. The group began their search for the relic fragments, guided by subtle clues left in the temple's inscriptions and the whispers of the forest spirits. In a secluded chamber beneath the temple, hidden behind a false wall of ivy, the fellowship discovered the first fragment, a small glowing shard of what once was the golden medallion. Dubbed the Ember of Hope, the shard pulsed with a gentle warmth that belied its ancient origins. However, retrieving it was not without cost. As Darian reached out to take the fragment, a spectral guardian emerged, a figure clad in ethereal armor, a remnant of the temple's once proud protectors. After a tense confrontation that tested their courage and resolve, The guardian acknowledged the purity of their intent and allowed Darian to claim the ember. With the fragments secured, the group felt a surge of optimism, a fleeting reminder that even in the deepest darkness, hope could still burn bright. The next leg of the journey led them to a mist-covered glade at the edge of the forest. There, beneath the twisted boughs of an ancient willow, lay the second fragment, a delicate, shimmering tear of pure gold. Known as the Tear of Remembrance, it was said to embody the collective sorrows of the past and the yearning for redemption. Mira, whose heart was as compassionate as it was resilient, was the one chosen to retrieve it. As she gently cradled the fragment, vivid visions of lost loved ones and forgotten memories flooded her mind. Though the pain was intense, Mira recognized that these memories were also the threads that bound the people of Nightfall Haven together. With newfound strength, she embraced the sorrow and carefully secured the fragment, vowing to use its power to heal the wounds of the town. The final fragment, known as the Whisper of Renewal, was hidden in the ruins of a long-abandoned archive within the temple complex. It lay concealed in a labyrinth of crumbling passages, its presence detectable only by the soft, almost musical hum it emitted, a sound that resonated with the promise of rebirth. Jonas's inventive mind and Seraphine's mystical insight guided them through the treacherous corridors. In a chamber filled with relics of knowledge and faded murals, they finally discovered the fragment, a slender, luminous sliver of gold that seemed to vibrate with energy. As Jonas carefully lifted it, the air around him shimmered, and for a brief moment, the oppressive weight of darkness seemed to lift, replaced by the gentle murmur of a distant dawn. With the three fragments in their possession, the Fellowship returned to Nightfall Haven. The journey had changed them, and with each step, they carried not only the relics, but the lessons learned from their trials, the resilience of hope, the power of memory, and the promise of renewal. Under the guidance of the ancient texts and the wisdom of the town's elders, they prepared for the ritual of restoration, a sacred ceremony meant to reunite the fragments and break the curse that had long smothered their world. The ritual was to be held in the central square of Nightfall Haven, a place that once gleamed with sunlight and laughter. Now it was a somber stage, bathed in the dim light of perpetual twilight. The townsfolk gathered in silence, their eyes filled with longing for the lost radiance of the sun. At the heart of the square, an altar was erected, its surface etched with ancient symbols of balance and rebirth. Leora, standing before the assembly with the fragments carefully placed in a ceremonial tray, recited the incantations passed down through generations, a litany of hope and contrition meant to appease the gods of old and mend the broken covenant between light and dark. Darian, Mira, Jonas, and Seraphine each contributed a personal token of their journey, reminders of the hardships endured and the victories won over despair. As the final words of the incantation echoed through the square, the fragments began to glow, first separately, then in unison. A brilliant beam of light burst forth from the assembled relic, slicing through the ever-present darkness and momentarily igniting the faces of the townsfolk with wonder. For one miraculous instant, as the light reached its zenith, the curse seemed to falter. The skies, long shrouded in perpetual dusk, trembled with the promise of dawn. Though the transformation was subtle, a change in the intensity of the twilight, a softening of the oppressive gloom, it was enough to kindle hope in the hearts of every lost soul present. In the days and months following the ritual, Nightfall Haven began to transform. The curse did not vanish entirely. Old wounds, after all, do not heal overnight, but the balance of light and shadow began to shift. The perpetual twilight deepened into a gentle dusk that gradually gave way to moments of clarity and warmth. The people found themselves looking up at a sky that, on rare occasions, seemed to shimmer with the faint promise of sunrise. The fields, once barren and shrouded in gloom, slowly responded to the newfound hope. Crops that had withered for generations began to show signs of life, and the air, though still cool, carried the faint scent of blossoms and renewal. In the hearts of the townsfolk, a quiet optimism took root, a belief that one day the sun might indeed rise. For Callum, Leora, and their brave companions, the journey was a profound transformation. They had ventured into darkness and emerged forever changed, their souls tempered by hardship and illuminated by hope. Their story, passed down from generation to generation, became the cornerstone of Nightfall Haven's new identity, a town that had known only despair, but now dared to dream of a future bathed in light. The relic, now reassembled and enshrined in the town's central temple, served as a constant reminder that even the darkest curses can be challenged, and that every lost soul can find its way home. The gate to renewal had been opened by the courage of those who were once lost, and through their collective struggle, a community was reborn. Years later, as the legend of Nightfall Haven evolved into a tale of resilience and hope, its people continued to honor the memory of the journey that had restored a part of their light. Elderly storytellers recounted the adventures of Callum, Leora, and the fellowship around crackling fires on cool starlit nights. Their words spoke of a time when the curse of endless dusk was broken by a single, unified effort. A moment when the lost discovered that hope was not found in the absence of light, but in the defiant persistence of the human spirit. On quiet mornings, when the horizon hinted at the possibility of a new dawn, villagers gathered in the town square to celebrate with songs and dances that echoed the bittersweet beauty of their rebirth. Children whose eyes shone with dreams of a brighter future played beneath the ancient temple where the relic was enshrined, a beacon of the eternal promise that even in a town where the sun once never rose, light could be reborn. As twilight gave way to a new era, Nightfall Haven stood as a testament to the transformative power of confronting one's deepest darkness and daring to reclaim the light. The journey of the lost had become the legacy of the found, and every soul who once wandered in despair now carried within them the seed of a new beginning. Evelyn Hartley was a reserved young woman with a past filled with unspoken sorrows and a present burdened by uncertainty. Following the unexpected passing of her estranged great-uncle, a reclusive scholar known only for his cryptic research into the occult, Evelyn inherited a dusty, leather-bound journal. Its cover was etched with intricate patterns and strange symbols that she did not recognize. Though it appeared to be an ordinary diary, a heavy aura of mystery clung to it. At first, Evelyn intended to discard the journal, dismissing it as a relic of a bygone era. Yet something about the object, perhaps the weight of its secrets, compelled her to keep it. On the first night it sat on her bedside table, the journal's blank pages seemed to pulse in the dim glow of her bedside lamp. Uncertain and a little frightened, she resolved to write in it herself, hoping to uncover the memories of her family's past. That very night, as Evelyn struggled to fall asleep, the room grew silent except for the steady tick of the old clock on the wall. In the quiet darkness, she felt compelled to open the journal. With trembling fingers, she flipped to the first page. To her astonishment, in a spidery, unfamiliar script, words began to appear, as if written by an unseen hand. I fear the night when shadows grow and hope withers. I fear the mirror's reflection that reveals the truth I dare not see. Evelyn's heart pounded. Had she imagined it? The words were not her own. They were the whispers of her own hidden anxieties, laid bare in ink upon paper. Terrified yet fascinated, she clutched the journal to her chest, unaware that her life was about to change forever. In the days that followed, Evelyn discovered that the journal was no passive repository of memories. Each night, as she slept fitfully, the journal wrote down her most secret and unspoken fears. It recounted her dread of failure at work, the gnawing anxiety over loneliness, and even the inexplicable terror of an unknown presence watching her from the corners of her room. The words were intimate, personal, too personal to be the product of chance. Unable to sleep, Evelyn began to notice that the journal's entries seemed to anticipate her nightmares. One evening, she read, "I fear the door that creaks open in the dead of night, heralding the arrival of what lurks beyond. I fear that the darkness holds the ghosts of my past." At that moment, as if on cue, the door in her apartment creaked open ever so slightly, sending a chill down her spine. Paralyzed with fear, she watched in horror as the journal's pages turned, as if guided by an invisible hand. It was as if the journal itself was a mirror reflecting her inner demons, a sentient object that thrived on her fear. As days turned to weeks, Evelyn's life became a torment of anxiety. Each morning, she would awake to find new entries in the journal, detailed accounts of her fears that she had not consciously entertained. The journal seemed to record not only her present dread, but also premonitions of future terror. It foretold financial ruin, the loss of loved ones, and even an obscure vision of a faceless figure stalking her footsteps. Friends and family grew concerned as Evelyn began to withdraw into herself. She could no longer enjoy the simple pleasures of life, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed tea, the laughter shared with colleagues, because every moment was clouded by the journal's relentless reminder of her deepest fears. In her isolation, she wondered whether the journal was cursed, or if it was some form of dark magic intended to expose the vulnerable parts of her soul. Determined to understand the mystery behind the journal, Evelyn sought the wisdom of Professor Alistair Reed, an aging librarian reputed to be well-versed in occult lore. In the dusty back room of the town's library, surrounded by ancient tomes and brittle manuscripts, Professor Reed listened intently as Evelyn recounted her experiences. After a long pause, his eyes grew distant as he recalled a legend. There are objects in this world that are not mere inanimate things. Some are imbued with a soul, a consciousness born from the fears and desires of those who created them. Your journal, my dear, might be one of these, a vessel that captures the unspoken nightmares of its owner, a cursed mirror for the soul. Professor Reed explained that such journals had been mentioned in the obscure writings of medieval mystics and alchemists. They were known to write the unacknowledged truths of their bearers, forcing them to confront what they tried to bury deep within. The process, he warned, was often painful, and only a courageous heart could survive the ordeal. Professor Reed hinted at an ancient ritual that might break the journal's hold, a ceremony known as the ritual of release. This rite required the owner to face the recorded fears head-on, to transcribe them into a separate, consecrated book, and then to burn the journal in a sacred fire, thus releasing the grip of the dark magic. Evelyn was both terrified and relieved by the possibility of breaking free from the journal's curse. With trembling resolve, she decided that the next full moon would be the night of her reckoning, a night when she would confront every fear inked upon those haunted pages. As the full moon ascended into a sky of inky blackness, Evelyn prepared for the ritual in a small clearing near an ancient stone circle, a place that Professor Reed had assured her was blessed by protective energies. She gathered the necessary items, a second journal with pristine blank pages bound in white leather, a vial of blessed oil, and a bundle of sage, dried and pungent with the promise of purification. Yet as she set up the sacred space, doubt gnawed at her. Could she truly confront the vast depths of her own terror? Would the ritual bring catharsis, or would it unleash even darker forces? The journal at her side seemed to pulse in the moonlight, as if urging her to proceed. With a deep breath, Evelyn opened her cursed journal and began to read aloud the most haunting entries. The words spilled forth like incantations, and each sentence was a mirror reflecting her inner torment. The wind seemed to carry the sound of her voice into the night, echoing against the ancient stones. In the flickering glow of a solitary candle, she took the blank journal and began to write, transcribing in her own hand every fear, every nightmare that the cursed journal had recorded. With each word, she felt as if a heavy burden was lifting from her shoulders, as if by naming her terror, she was diminishing its power. The ritual was an exorcism of sorts, a reclaiming of her own narrative from the clutches of an object that had once dictated her emotional life. As she wrote, spectral images seemed to dance at the edge of her vision. She saw herself as a frightened child, lost in a labyrinth of uncertainty. She saw faces of those she had lost, twisted by sorrow and regret. And she saw shadows of doubt that had haunted her steps for years. The process was agonizing, each revelation a painful reminder of wounds left unhealed. Yet with every written word, the room seemed to grow lighter, the oppressive weight of her fears slowly receding. When the last word was written, Evelyn closed the new journal and took a moment to let silence fill the clearing. She then opened the cursed journal one final time and recited a prayer of forgiveness, a plea to the forces that had bound her so tightly, asking for mercy and the strength to be free. With tears streaming down her face, she set the cursed journal atop a pyre of dry wood arranged in the center of the stone circle. The sage smoldered beside it, sending fragrant wisps of smoke into the cool night air. Then, with a trembling hand, she ignited the pyre. Flames leaped eagerly, consuming the pages, the ink, and the dark magic that had held her hostage for so long. As the cursed journal burned, the air filled with a low, mournful sigh, as if the very spirit of her fears was being released into the ether. The flames danced, reflecting in her tearful eyes until the journal was nothing more than ash, carried away on the gentle breeze. In the quiet hours after the ritual, as the first blush of dawn painted the sky in soft pastels, Evelyn felt a profound change within her. The incessant whisper of her fears had quieted to a gentle murmur, no longer dominating her thoughts or haunting her dreams. In its place was a space, a calm, empty canvas upon which she could begin to write a new chapter of her life. The blank journal she had filled during the ritual now served as a testament to her journey. Its pages bore not only the recounting of her fears, but also the story of her courage in the face of them. She carried that journal with her as a reminder that to acknowledge one's deepest terrors is to reclaim one's power, to transform despair into a stepping stone toward healing. In the days that followed, Evelyn found herself opening up to the world in ways she had never dared before. She began to share her experiences with close friends and even started speaking at local gatherings about the importance of facing one's inner darkness. Her story, raw and unfiltered, resonated with many who too had been haunted by the shadows of their past. The curse of the journal had, in a cruel twist, become the catalyst for her transformation. What had once been an object of dread was now a symbol of renewal, a tangible record of the day she chose to stand up to her fears and declare that they would no longer dictate her life. Years later, Evelyn's life had taken on a new meaning. She became a mentor to those struggling with their own inner demons, offering guidance and compassion to anyone who felt overwhelmed by the weight of their unspoken fears. Her once solitary existence blossomed into a network of support and understanding, a community of souls who had learned that the darkest parts of themselves could be transformed into sources of strength. In time, Evelyn compiled her experiences and insights into a book titled Ink of the Soul, a work that interwove the narrative of the cursed journal with practical wisdom on overcoming fear. The book became a beacon for many, a reminder that even the most harrowing nightmares could be faced and overcome. The memory of the journal that once wrote its owner's fears faded into legend, a story told by those who had witnessed the transformation of a life once shackled by terror. For every person who picked up Ink of the Soul, there was a spark of hope, an understanding that the journey into darkness, however painful, could lead to a rebirth into light. Evelyn's journey taught her and those around her that fear, when confronted, is not a permanent prison, but a temporary state, one that can be overcome with courage, compassion, and the willingness to embrace the truth of one's own heart. On quiet mornings, when the dew still clung to the blades of grass and the sky was painted with the soft hues of a new day, Evelyn would often sit by her window with her journal in hand. In those moments of stillness, she reflected on the long, winding path that had led her from a life of silent torment to one of authentic, if imperfect, hope. She knew that the journey was never truly over. Fear would sometimes creep back into the corners of her mind, but now she possessed the tools to face it. Wisdom born from the ashes of a cursed past, and a heart that had learned that even in the darkness, there lies the promise of a new dawn. Thus the story of the journal that wrote its owner's fears endures, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of confronting one's innermost terrors. In every page that had been filled, in every fear that had been transmuted into hope, there was a reminder that we all have the power to rewrite our own destinies. On stormy nights when the ocean roared like a living beast and the moon played hide-and-seek behind swirling clouds, the inhabitants of the coastal town of Mariner's Rest would speak in hushed tones about the vanishing shipwreck. Fishermen whose weathered faces bore the marks of countless tempests recalled the spectral image of a great galleon that emerged from the mist. Its tattered sails and broken masts were visible only for a fleeting moment before it was swallowed by the tide, leaving behind nothing but a memory and a chill that gripped the heart. Legends told of ancient curses, lost treasure, and the restless souls of seafarers doomed to wander the depths. Over generations, the story of the disappearing wreck had grown into myth, a reminder that some mysteries of the sea were meant to remain forever hidden. Long before Mariner's Rest was even a whisper on the map, a proud sailing vessel known as the Celestial Maiden ruled the open waters. Commanded by Captain Evander Drake, a man renowned for his daring voyages and his unwavering loyalty to his crew, the ship sailed in pursuit of new lands and untold riches. Yet fate would not be so kind. During one fateful voyage, the Celestial Maiden encountered a tempest of unimaginable fury. The storm's anger was not solely of nature, many believed, but a divine retribution born of ancient transgressions. As the vessel struggled against the maelstrom, Captain Drake and his crew were forced to confront a terrible secret, a forbidden relic, stolen from a long-forgotten temple of the sea gods, lay hidden in the ship's hold. In their arrogance, they had disturbed a power older than time itself. In a night of terror and crashing waves, the storm raged with a vengeance that no mortal could withstand. When dawn broke over a calmed sea, the ship was found wrecked upon a narrow, craggy shore. But as the tide advanced, the remnants of the once mighty vessel seemed to dissolve into the surging water, as if swallowed by the curse that had been set in motion. From that day forward, it was said that the Celestial Maiden was condemned to reappear only at the edge of twilight and vanish with the turning of the tide, forever trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead. The curse of the Celestial Maiden wove itself into the fabric of coastal folklore. Mariners believed that when the ship appeared, it was not merely a wreck, but a vessel carrying the tormented souls of Captain Drake and his doomed crew. Their spectral forms were said to wander the decks of the ghost ship, murmuring tales of betrayal, loss, and the unyielding grip of fate. The wreck became a symbol, a warning that those who tamper with the ancient powers of the sea risk incurring a debt that may never be repaid. It was on an unusually calm evening that young Isla Marlowe, a curious daughter of a local fisherman, first saw the ghostly ship. While walking along the moonlit beach, Isla noticed a strange gleam among the rocky outcrops. As she drew closer, the silhouette of a grand galleon emerged from a veil of fog. Its figure was both majestic and melancholic, its broken masts and decaying hull telling a story of both glory and downfall. Isla stood transfixed as the tide began to roll in. With each passing minute, the ship's form grew fainter, its outline dissolving into the churning water. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the vessel vanished completely, leaving Isla with nothing but a lingering sense of sorrow and a secret burning within her heart. Word of Isla's sighting spread like wildfire through Mariner's Rest. The town, already steeped in lore and superstition, buzzed with renewed fervor. Elders recalled their own half-forgotten memories of the ghost ship, and local scholars debated the true nature of the curse. Some whispered of lost fortunes hidden within the wreck's sunken hold, while others warned that seeking the ship could invite misfortune. Yet for Isla, the experience ignited a determination to understand what lay behind the spectral apparition. Isla soon found herself surrounded by those who, too, felt the magnetic pull of the mystery. Among them was Captain Roland, a retired seafarer whose weathered visage and gruff manner belied a deep well of knowledge about maritime legends. There was also Lillian, a scholarly historian from the distant city of Port Aurelia, whose research into ancient curses and sunken relics had brought her to Mariner's Rest. Completing the group was Jonas, a quiet but resolute boat builder whose hands, scarred by decades of labor, had built vessels that withstood even the fiercest storms. Together they formed an unlikely fellowship bound by the desire to unearth the truth behind the vanishing shipwreck. Their goal was clear: to follow the whispers of the past, to dive into the murky depths of history and myth, and perhaps to confront the curse that had ensnared the celestial maiden. Their investigation led them first to the coastal library, a modest, time-worn building filled with manuscripts and diaries, chronicling the lives of those who had once sailed these treacherous waters. In the brittle pages of a logbook written by a long-deceased sailor, they found cryptic references to a ship that returns with the tide and a dire warning against disturbing the relic hidden within its hold. Further, an old map hinted at a submerged cave system along the cliffs, a possible resting place for the stolen relic and the key to the curse. Armed with these clues, the Fellowship set out on a daring expedition. They rented a sturdy boat and sailed to the treacherous rock formations near the suspected location. With each cresting wave and each echo of the wind, they felt the weight of destiny bearing down upon them. For the sea, they knew, held secrets that could either grant unimaginable fortune or unleash an ancient wrath. One fog-shrouded morning, as the tide receded to reveal hidden passages along the cliffs, the Fellowship anchored their boat in a sheltered cove. Using lanterns and ropes, they ventured into a labyrinth of underwater caves carved into the ancient rock. The damp, echoing corridors were filled with strange bioluminescent fungi and the haunting sounds of water dripping onto stone, a solemn, rhythmic beat that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Deep within the maze, they discovered a cavern marked with faded symbols and inscriptions in a language long lost. In the center of the cavern lay an altar, and upon it, half buried in silt and seaweed, was the relic, a crystalline object pulsing with an ethereal light. The very air in the cavern seemed charged with a force that was both mesmerizing and foreboding. As Jonas carefully extracted the relic, a tremor of energy coursed through the cavern. The water around them churned, and the sound of distant, mournful voices echoed off the walls. It became apparent that the relic was the very heart of the ancient curse, a talisman that had once been the focus of divine retribution. Its removal disrupted the balance, and for a brief, terrifying moment, the Fellowship feared that they had awakened forces beyond their control. Yet, driven by a mix of fear and hope, they carried the relic back to Mariner's Rest, resolved to use it to break the curse once and for all. The path ahead was uncertain, but the knowledge they had gained and the courage of their collective hearts was a beacon in the gathering darkness. In the days that followed, preparations for a final confrontation with the curse were made in earnest. Under the guidance of Lillian's research and Captain Roland's seafaring wisdom, The fellowship devised a ritual to return the relic to its rightful place, thereby restoring balance and freeing the celestial maiden from its spectral torment. On the night of a rare lunar eclipse, when the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest, they gathered on the desolate shore. The beach, normally silent and unassuming, transformed into a sacred ground, illuminated by the eerie light of the eclipsed moon. In a circle of salt and sea glass, they placed the relic upon a stone plinth and began the incantations described in the ancient manuscripts. As their voices rose in a haunting cadence, the sea itself seemed to answer. Waves crashed against the rocks with an urgency that shook the very earth, and the fog over the horizon began to swirl more violently. The energy of the ritual resonated with the pulse of the ocean, as if the land and sea were locked in a timeless dance of retribution and redemption. In the climax of the ritual, a shock of brilliant light burst forth from the relic. The very fabric of the night seemed to tear apart, and in that dazzling moment, the ghostly form of the celestial maiden materialized on the horizon. The ship, its silhouette bathed in spectral light, drifted slowly toward the shore. For a few heartbeats, it appeared as a vision of both despair and majesty, a vessel whose tragic fate had been written in the annals of time. As the relic's light pulsed, the curse began to unravel. The phantom ship's form wavered, then faded, as if it were dissolving into the ocean mist. With the rising tide, the cursed wreck was drawn back into the depths, its tormented presence finally laid to rest. The fog, too, began to lift, retreating as the first hints of dawn broke over the horizon, a dawn unmarred by the shroud of ancient sorrow. In the wake of the ritual, Mariner's Rest experienced a transformation. The once ominous fog that had haunted its shores for generations receded, replaced by the clear light of a new day. The townspeople emerged from their homes with cautious optimism, and the sea, now calm and clear, whispered promises of renewal and hope. Isla, whose fateful encounter with the ghost ship had sparked the entire quest, felt a deep sense of closure. She knew that while the mystery of the celestial maiden would forever linger in the hearts of those who believed, its curse had finally been broken. The relic was enshrined in a modest temple on the cliffs, a symbol of the sacrifices made and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of ancient, unfathomable forces. Captain Roland, Lillian, Jonas, and Isla each returned to their lives forever changed by the events that had transpired. Their story, of a shipwreck that vanished with the tide, of a cursed relic, and of a community united in hope, was passed down through the generations. Elders recounted the tale by the light of evening fires, ensuring that the lessons learned were never forgotten, that some mysteries, no matter how deeply hidden, can be overcome through courage, unity, and the unyielding pursuit of truth. In time, the legend of the vanishing wreck became a source of inspiration for all who heard it. It was a reminder that even the darkest curses can be undone, and that the tide of destiny, though powerful and unpredictable, can be redirected by those brave enough to stand against it. Years later, as the waves lapped gently against the shores of a now peaceful Mariner's Rest, Isla would often walk along the beach at dawn. In the quiet moments before the day fully broke, she would remember the ghostly sight of the celestial maiden, a bittersweet memory of a time when the sea whispered secrets of loss and redemption. And as the tide rolled in and out with its eternal rhythm, she knew that the vanishing shipwreck, though gone from sight, would forever remain a part of the town's soul, a legacy of mystery, sacrifice, and the promise of new beginnings. Long before the manor was abandoned and left to decay, its corridors echoed with laughter and the soft hum of genteel gatherings. Yet there was one room, secluded at the very heart of the mansion, that remained shrouded in silence, a silence so profound it seemed to absorb every sound. In hushed conversations, the residents called it the Room of Whispers, unaware of the terror that would later come to be associated with it. Over time, As tragedy befell the manor and sorrow seeped into every stone, the silence transformed into a cacophony of despair. Shadows on the walls began to twist and writhe, and at the stroke of midnight, their silent forms erupted into screams that could chill the soul. The origins of the cursed room were rooted in a betrayal that stained the manor's history. In a time long past, a revered noble family dwelled within the mansion. Their prosperity, however, was built upon dark secrets and bitter feuds. When the patriarch of the family, driven by pride and consumed by jealousy, deceived his most trusted kin for personal gain, an ancient force was provoked. The vengeful spirits of those betrayed, seeking retribution for their shattered lives, cursed the very room where the treachery occurred. Their lamentations were so powerful that even the passing of centuries could not mute them. Instead, the room became a repository for sorrow, its shadows imbued with a pain so intense that on quiet nights one could hear them scream. Tucked away behind a heavy oak door, bound in tarnished iron, the infamous chamber was a study in gloom. Its walls, once adorned with opulent tapestries, now bore peeling layers of faded grandeur, stained with the residue of ancient tears. The floor, covered in dusty, worn carpets, resonated with the weight of innumerable secrets. It was said that within these walls, light fought an endless battle with darkness, each beam of moonlight revealing silhouettes that moved with unsettling life. For those who dared enter, the experience was nothing short of a descent into madness. The air was thick with a chill that seeped into the bones, and every surface seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was in this room that the shadows, long, twisting forms that defied the natural order, would suddenly burst forth with an unearthly scream, as if crying out for justice, forgiveness, or release from an eternal torment. Within the room, the shadows were not mere absences of light, but entities imbued with emotion. Their screams were not random. They were the voices of the lost, echoing the pain of broken bonds and unhealed wounds. Some claimed to hear the anguished cries of a young woman betrayed by the man she loved, while others swore they could distinguish the tormented pleas of a father mourning the loss of his only child. Each scream was a fragment of a forgotten story, a curse that trapped the echoes of grief within the very fabric of the room. In a nearby village, nestled in the foothills of the ancient estate, lived a scholar named Evander Blackwood. Known for his relentless pursuit of the arcane and his collection of forbidden texts, Evander had spent years researching the manor's tragic past. Tales of the cursed room had haunted him since childhood, and his nights were filled with dreams of anguished voices and flickering shadows. Determined to uncover the truth behind the legend, he resolved to visit the manor and document the horrors concealed within its walls. Evander arrived at the manor on a bitter autumn evening. The wind howled through barren trees, and a thin mist clung to the ground like a shroud. With a lantern in hand and a heart steeled against the unknown, he pushed open the creaking gate and stepped into the realm of lost souls. As he navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Evander felt an oppressive weight settling over him. The mansion, though silent, seemed to watch him with unseen eyes. Finally, he reached the door to the infamous room. With trembling hands, he turned the heavy key and pushed the door open. The moment the door creaked ajar, an overwhelming chill rushed out, as though the very essence of sorrow had been unleashed. Inside, Evander's lantern cast long, wavering shadows against the walls. For a long, heart-stopping minute, there was only silence. Then, as the clock struck midnight, the room came alive. The shadows began to convulse, and with a sudden, ear-piercing wail, they screamed, a sound that shattered the quiet and echoed like 1,000 lost souls crying out in despair. The scream was not just a sound, it was an assault on the senses. Evander felt his mind teeter on the edge of comprehension as the room seemed to close in around him. The voices, layered upon one another, recounted tales of betrayal, loss, and injustice so profound that his heart pounded in terror and sorrow. The intensity of the sound made his vision blur, and for a fleeting moment he saw flashes of the past, a glimpse of the noble family, the treachery that had ignited the curse, and the endless mourning that had ensnared the shadows. Unable to bear the cacophony, Evander staggered backward. His carefully kept journal slipped from his grasp, pages scattering like desperate memories across the cold floor. The room, now fully awakened, seemed to pulse with a rhythm of despair, drawing him deeper into its dark embrace. As Evander fought to maintain his sanity, one shadow broke away from the rest, a figure that appeared more defined, more human than the others. It moved slowly, its form shifting between the solid and the spectral, until it hovered before him. In a voice both sorrowful and commanding, it spoke. "Do you seek to know our pain, scholar? To bear witness to our eternal lament?" The voice was laden with centuries of grief, yet within it lay a hint of hope, a desperate desire for liberation. Though terrified, Evander found himself compelled to answer. He whispered, "I seek the truth of this curse, so that the suffering may be understood, and perhaps one day set free." The shadow regarded him with a sadness that pierced his soul. "The truth lies within the betrayal of hearts, in the echoes of promises broken," it intoned. "Only by embracing our sorrow can the chains of the curse be undone." In that moment of anguished revelation, Evander understood that his quest was not merely academic. It was a journey into the very heart of human grief. The shadow's words resonated with him, and though his mind recoiled at the prospect of confronting such darkness, he knew he must persevere. The spectral figure extended a hand, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. "Take this," it whispered, "and bind your soul with our memories. Only then may you see the path to redemption." With trembling fingers, Evander accepted a small, dark medallion that materialized from the shadow. Its surface was etched with symbols of mourning and hope intertwined, a talisman of sorrow that would forever link him to the voices of the past. Empowered by the medallion, Evander spent nights poring over ancient texts and deciphering the cryptic language of the manor's history. The medallion allowed him to see fragments of the past, the moment of betrayal in the family, the anguished cries of those left behind, and the genesis of the curse that had cursed the room. Each revelation was a dagger of pain, yet with each truth uncovered, the intensity of the screaming shadows slowly abated. Guided by visions and haunted by echoes, Evander realized that the key to breaking the curse lay in a ritual of atonement, a ceremony that would reconcile the tortured spirits with the living world. It required an offering of genuine remorse and a vow to remember the pain without being consumed by it. In essence, it demanded the acceptance of sorrow as an essential part of life and the transformation of grief into wisdom. As another midnight approached, the manor's atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. Evander, now marked by the medallion and forever changed by his encounters, prepared for the ritual. In the center of the cursed room, he arranged relics of the past, a faded portrait of the noble family, a rusted locket containing a lock of hair, and a small vial of water from the manor's ancient well, each a symbol of the pain and love that had once flourished within these walls. With a quill and parchment, he penned words of lament and promise, an invocation to the lost souls, asking for forgiveness and pledging to bear their stories so that their suffering might never be forgotten. The incantations, drawn from the darkest corners of forgotten lore, resonated through the chamber as if the walls themselves were weeping. As the ritual commenced, the cursed room transformed once more. The oppressive silence gave way to a subdued murmur, and the flickering shadows gathered around Evander, their forms wavering with a strange, almost reverent stillness. The medallion at his chest pulsed in time with his heartbeat as he read aloud the sacred words, each syllable a bridge between the living and the damned. Gradually, the cacophony of screams softened to a low, mournful hymn, a chorus of voices that told of loss, regret, and the eternal hope for forgiveness. The spectral figure that had first spoken to him reappeared, its form now less menacing and more sorrowfully serene. "Your voice carries the weight of truth," it said softly. "In your remembrance, we find our release." As the final words of the ritual echoed off the walls, a brilliant, ethereal light filled the room. The shadows, one by one, began to dissipate into the light, their screams transforming into whispers of gratitude and farewell. When the first rays of dawn crept through the broken windows of the manor, the cursed room was transformed. The oppressive weight of despair had lifted, replaced by a quiet, reflective peace. Though the echoes of sorrow still lingered, they were now gentle reminders of past wounds that had begun to heal, rather than torments that would forever haunt the living. Evander emerged from the room forever altered. His eyes, once filled with terror, now shone with a deep empathy and understanding of the human heart's capacity to bear sorrow and to transcend it. The medallion remained around his neck as a token of his journey, a symbol that the pain of the past could be transformed into a beacon of wisdom for future generations. News of the transformation spread slowly through the nearby village. While many still spoke in hushed tones of the cursed room and the screams of shadows, a new narrative began to take shape. A narrative of redemption, acceptance, and the healing power of memory. Evander dedicated himself to chronicling the stories of those lost and the lessons learned from the cursed chamber, ensuring that the legacy of sorrow was remembered not as a burden, but as a path toward understanding and compassion. Years passed, and the manor, once a place of relentless terror, became a site of pilgrimage for those seeking to understand the complexities of grief and redemption. The room where shadows once screamed stood as a solemn reminder that even the darkest of curses could be unraveled by the courage to face one's own sorrow. Visitors reported hearing faint echoes, whispers of the past that, rather than instilling fear, offered solace and a connection to the eternal cycle of loss and renewal. Evander Blackwood, now a venerable keeper of the manor's secrets, often wandered the quiet corridors. In his twilight years, he would pause before the chamber, now bathed in gentle light, and listen to the soft murmur of memories. He knew that while the screams of shadows had faded into whispers, their stories lived on, etched into the very fabric of time, a reminder that in every heartache there lies the seed of healing. Thus, the story of the room where shadows scream endures, a tale of haunting despair and transformative redemption, of cursed voices that ultimately found release through the enduring power of remembrance. In the silence that now pervades that ancient chamber, one can still hear, if only softly, the echoes of lives once shattered, now pieced together in the quiet beauty of forgiveness and hope.